Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our product education webinar on cold air intakes. We have Mike Santa Cruz here, who's a product expert and in sales and marketing. And then we have Justin Schultz here, who is one of our product engineers. So I'm going to be the moderator. I'll be checking in on the chat, the Q&A. If you have more questions, you could always put them in the Q&A. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions beforehand. So that's going to be what we're focusing on today. Mike?
Great. Yep. All right. Thanks, Tarynay. Good morning, everybody, wherever you're at. It looks like we got some really good questions today, especially from other parts of the world globally. So that's kind of impressive. One of the things that we definitely want to delve into today is talking about the AFE cold air intake systems without getting too much detail, but just going over the basics of like some things like a cold air, true cold air intake that's sealed versus like an open cold air intake, and why would you even want an intake system for your vehicle? So Justin, thanks for joining us today and really appreciate the time. So let's jump right into some questions. You ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, on. Okay, so one of the questions that most people start with anytime they're looking into getting an engine upgrade or anything for their vehicle upgrade is, you know, why get a cold air intake or why get an intake system for their vehicle? And you know, you want to kind of expound just in general why anybody would take a perfectly good intake system out of a brand new car and throw in an aftermarket intake.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think that some people do install intakes for different reasons. Obviously, a lot of people install them because they help enhance the engine performance, get better airflow, you know, increased horsepower and torque. Really, an intake from the factory is, like you said, perfectly good intake, but it is a restriction point. A lot of the manufacturers, they'll design the intake kind of as an afterthought, and they program the vehicle to work with it. So by putting on an aftermarket performance intake, we reduce that restriction, allow the engine to breathe a little more freely, get a little more throttle response, and help the overall engine efficiency. And obviously, engine sound. A lot of people want to hear the intake, and they like the look of it. You know, we got a lot of options for carbon fiber, different aesthetics, and people like to customize and personalize their vehicle. So,
yeah, that's covered all the basics right there. So you're not really making more power for the engine per se when you put an aftermarket intake on. You're kind of getting the power back.
yeah, I mean, by opening that up, we're allowing the engine to pull the air in easier. So we're basically reducing that restriction. So yeah, we do see horsepower increases, but really, I mean, that engine's already got the potential there. It's just, it's got things slowing it down. It's got to go through an air intake system that's got a restrictive filter and smaller openings and that kind of stuff. So we just try and maximize that.
Kind of like exhaust. A lot of guys get exhaust because they're thinking, hey, you know, get more air in, you got to get more air out efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, it's part of
that makes sense.
Yep, volumetric efficiency. So you want more air in, more air out. So
nice. Well, speaking of power, of course, we had one of the questions that came in out from Fred at Parts ID, and he was asking what average horsepower increases would one see from adding a cold air intake?
Yeah, definitely depends on which vehicle you're installing it on, which intake you're putting on there. Typically, we see about 5 to 20 horsepower increase on vehicles, which comes out to about 5% increase over the base horsepower of the engine. So that could be expected on most of the Momentum and Magnum Force intakes that we offer.
Cool. So just by installing an intake, you can see horsepower gains?
Yep.
So
yeah, that's correct.
Even the smaller numbers, like 5, 6 horsepower, that's pretty good, whether you fill it on the butt dyno or not. I mean, you're still getting a little bit more of a gain, but more importantly, you are allowing more air into the engine.
Yeah, correct.
So that makes sense. Okay, so moving on to what are the advantages of an AFE cold air intake? Obviously, we're going to be a little bit biased. Yes, we're AFE power, full disclosure, but it's a good question in terms of we get a lot of questions similar that ask, what sets AFE apart from other brands of cold air intake systems that are an aftermarket. So with that, like if I were a sales guy at a counter and customer comes in and says, "Hey, I've heard about AFE, I've heard about brand XYZ," and other letters.
Yeah.
What sets AFE apart, our intakes from the other companies?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few things. First, our capability. Since we did start as an air filter company, that's still the core of all of our intakes that we sell. So yeah, we always start with the air filter design when we're doing a new intake, and we try and fit the biggest one possible. If we don't have a filter that we think is right for that vehicle, we'll make a new one. All our filters are made in-house, and we can make changes easily on the fly and custom tailor that filter to fit the application. So by size, filter life, fitment, everything. So we're not stuck designing our intakes around like pre-purchased air filters and things that we got sitting on the shelf. We can, we have a lot of capability in-house, and we can do whatever we want that way. And testing. So we test everything in-house. All of our intakes go through extensive testing. So flow testing, dyno testing, drivability, before we release anything to production. So it's not just design something that fits and ship it out the door. So we do a lot of testing and iterations if we need to, and make sure, we're making the most power possible. And the third thing we strive for is easy installation. So a lot of our cold air intakes are designed around the simple, like bolt-in, one-piece housing. You'll always see that in our marketing content. So that is a big advantage and makes it a lot easier for somebody to install this themselves and be able to drop that in. They're not fumbling around with a lot of brackets and stuff like that, trying to piece their housing together before they can even install it in the vehicle. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that I quickly noticed that kind of set the AFE intake design processes apart from most other companies. And I've been to a lot of presentations, if you will, in my salesman days, where we go out and visit the manufacturer and they kind of tell us how their products are made. And everybody does a lot of great testing and pre-planning and everything else. But what was interesting to note is that a lot of other manufacturers, they kind of outsource a lot of their components. And when I started working at AFE, I was surprised actually that we are capable of doing all of these things in-house. And what was more surprising, I get to still stay in sunny Southern California. It's not often you hear that aftermarket performance companies are thriving in California these days.
Yeah.
So that being said, one of the other questions that we actually got from 4x4 Center in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, from Abdullah, he was asking, like, what are some of the points that like an end user would really need to know about AFE to make a decision on buying that intake? And you covered quite a few, Justin. From the dyno testing, from the in-house design, from the manufacturing, everything's kind of in-house. But maybe if somebody were trying to make that buying decision, what would set us AFE apart from other brands of intakes?
Yeah. I mean, we in R&D here, we strive for innovative designs. We pride ourselves on that. We're always looking for ways to optimize performance. We hold ourselves and our product to high standards of quality. And we have a large product range. So it's not just intakes, it's a full catalog of parts for your vehicle. So you can get an intake, an exhaust, intercooler, charge pipes, depending on the vehicle. So we have a real wide range of products, and we develop products for a lot of different vehicles. So if you were selling our product, that kind of thing. you can go to one company and have products for a ton of different applications, and BMWs, Jeeps, diesel trucks, gas trucks, all different applications there. So that's one thing that sets us apart. We don't focus solely on one genre. So, and then our research and development is obviously our big thing. It's in the name, engineering. So, we invest a lot in our R&D and continuously improve. So we're always, every intake that we do is CAD designed, dyno tested, 3D printed, and tested on the vehicle before we ever go to tooling on anything. So we really optimize the design. A lot of companies don't, or they don't have the capability, so they design something that fits and hope it looks good and works. So we have that capability in-house, and that really sets us apart. And then the last thing that really sets us apart is everything's for the intake is really made in-house. Our air filters are made right here in-house. Our plastic parts are made across the street at our Rotopower facility. Sheet metal parts are at ASMT in Rancho right here. So everything's made, right here in California.
Yeah, I noticed what you mentioned earlier too about putting our products to the test. I think a lot of people, one of the mission statements or edicts here is fail quickly. And we've seen it firsthand where you rapid prototype a certain design or application and you push it to its limits until it may throw check engine light, or it may make the car run, go into limp mode, and then you dial it back. So you optimize the performance by making all the right changes, all moves. You also mentioned the design, and you mentioned earlier too that the Momentum has that one piece housing design.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions kind of leads into this next question. This one's actually from Sonia over at Real Truck in Michigan. No bragging rights about sunny Southern California, so apologies if you're in that Midwest and Eastern winter climb right now. But the question she had was, is the Momentum or the cold air intakes, are they designed to be easily installed by the customer, or does it need to be installed by a mechanic?
Yeah, most of our intakes can all be designed or can all be installed, at home with simple tools. So yeah, it's all straightforward. If you have any kind of knowledge working under the hood, I think you'd be fine installing an intake. Even if I've done my own oil change, you could probably do an intake install. It's pretty basic. We do have some complex ones. I mean, there's some Porsche intakes where you got to pull the whole bumper off the car, and it gets pretty complicated and takes a couple hours, and you wouldn't be able to do it alone. It'd probably be better to either have some friends that know what they're doing or have it professionally installed. So
some of the applications, for the most part, or most of the applications are easily installed by a DIYer, but some we might recommend that they have installed by a shop. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good to know. So let's say I have a customer, or I'm the guy who actually installed on my 2024 runner the intake, and I get a check engine light. How do we approach finding out the problem with that?
It definitely happens. So yeah, I mean, we rigorously test all of our products. We do our due diligence, install it on multiple vehicles, spend a lot of time driving them, dynoing, doing everything we can to prevent that. But issues can occur. Most of the check engine lights we see can occur during installation. Somebody might forget to plug something back in. The connector's not clipped in all the way and they thought it was, something like that, where it's pretty basic and they can fix it themselves. Obviously, if they have any problems, they can give us a call. We got our customer service staff's always willing to help and can walk them through a lot of those type of errors. Just reading the instruction sheets, watching some of the install videos usually helps. So we try and do install videos on all of our key products for intakes and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, refer to that. And then, if you still get a check engine light, I mean, one of the main things we see a lot of with check engine light issues are just the parameters of the vehicles change. The manufacturer might come out with a new flash for the ECU, and because we always try to be first to market, we're usually working with pretty early versions of vehicles with flashes and stuff like that. As the vehicle becomes a little older, newer model years or whatever, even though the engine hasn't changed, some of these parameters might change. So some of that stuff we try and keep an eye on and make sure that, we'll try and mitigate all those issues. But yeah, I mean, with the new vehicles, there's so many sensors monitoring so many different things that, even though you throw an intake on, you might get a check engine light for a boost sensor or a crankcase sensor or something else. It's not just a mass airflow sensor anymore. So there's a lot of things that we got to make sure that our product works well on. We've seen cases where we've been fighting check engine lights on new products, and we find out even this completely stock vehicle has the same light, and it's a problem with the manufacturer. So, so I mean, yeah, we try and do our due diligence on that and make sure that we mitigate all these issues, but they do occur, and we try and jump on that as fast as possible.
You mentioned cars are coming with more sensors and more onboard dyno diagnostics. And one of the calls that I had been involved with, it was filter minder. So basically, as soon as they put the intake on, they didn't know that they had to do some resetting, which is completely different than a tune, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But you just got to reset your stock parameters, right?
Yeah. On those filter minders, a lot of them are electronic, and they're just checking restriction on the intake. And if it's not within parameters, it'll throw a light saying, "Hey, your filter needs to be serviced," or something like that.
Cool. Okay, moving on. So we got this question from Brett Keystone. He wanted to know why we have multiple variations of our intakes for same applications, and his thinking or question was, is there a good, better, best strategy towards that? And that's a really good question, because we do get that a lot, especially with F-150 owners. Why do we have so many choices for an intake for the same year, make, model?
Yeah, we do have a lot of options. I mean, a lot of them are priced differently, so that's one of the things, just trying to make it easier for people to get into the options that way. We have some intakes that are closed systems, some that are open. So if somebody's looking for a little less sound, but they want the performance, they can go with some of the closed intakes. If they really want the sound, open intakes are better for them. We offer a lot of variety as far as the tube material. So an aluminum tube might resonate, give you a little bit better sound, where a plastic one might insulate that a little bit more. We have carbon fiber intakes for aesthetics, that kind of stuff. So even though it might perform pretty close to the same as a Magnum Force versus our Track Series carbon fiber one, some people might want to, spend the extra money on that carbon fiber appearance because that's what they want to do with their car. So we're giving them the options on that. And then now we've even introduced some color options. We've got some red intakes, some orange intakes, and stuff like that. Just because everybody's looking for something different, they all want to customize. So that's really our strategy on that, is just going after the different markets. And if people want to buy a red intake, we'll sell them a red intake. It's the same performance, everything else is our standard intake, but people like to match the intake to their car, or contrast with the car, or accent colors. So as far as good, better, best goes, I think a good would really be any of our intakes that have the serviceable filter. So rapid induction, super stock, anything like that. Better and best is really subjective, depending on what you're looking for. Our open Magnum Force intakes might create too much sound for somebody, but they might make more horsepower. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want the horsepower, I mean, obviously the Magnum Force and the Momentum both have large filters, large tube diameters. They'll both make a lot of power, but the Magnum Force might be a little louder. So yeah, it's a little subjective depending on what you want on that one.
So bottom line is price point and kind of different strokes, different folks. So it depends on what the customer wants. And I did notice that too, is that a lot of people have different, not just price point, deliveries, but they're also looking at, what's going to be, I want to go to a show, I want to pop my hood and show off the engine bay. It's okay that it doesn't make as much horsepower as this other one. I just like the looks of it, and it's more personalization.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So hopefully that took care of that question for you, Brick. Another one from Brick out of Keystone was like, what is the process that AFE goes through to assure that the executive order numbers or the EO numbers on the products that we develop, and what percent of the SKUs or part numbers we have CARB approval? Since we're in California, we know firsthand, and we work with CARB day in and day out. What is the process to get those EO numbers?
Yeah, we do prioritize that. It does take a little while. So all of our new intakes that we've been doing, we have been submitting for CARB approval. It could take 6 months. It could take 2-3 years, depending on how long CARB decides to take. So really, once we submit for those, it's out of our hands. But we do list all of our CARB-EO numbers on our website if there's any questions on that. I don't really have a good percentage or number on how many intakes have a CARB-EO. But one of the other things that we have been doing is we've been working with SEMA on their SEMA CERT program, which verifies that our products are approved to sell in at least 49 states. They meet the EPA requirements and that kind of stuff. But obviously, still got to wait for that CARB-EO before it's legal to sell in California. So, yeah, all we could do is submit and do our due diligence on that and play the waiting game.
Yeah, it's really up to CARB to grant us that EO number. We don't have any control once we send our application paperwork into that. So we kind of got a late start, so I'm going to try to rush through as many of these questions that we have left over.
Hey guys, I just want to clarify, you are utilizing the SEMA garage for the CARB verification, because recently, I don't know if you've seen it or anything, CARB, the Air Resource Board, recognized SEMA's the SEMA shop as qualified testing for EPA and certification now. So if you go through the SEMA process, you're basically almost guaranteed a CARB number now until they finalize the results.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we can't legally sell without doing the actual CARB-EO, but at least we know it's on the fast track that way. But it still can take quite a while to get the actual number, unfortunately. But thank you.
Okay, so moving along, the filtration capacity versus an OEM filter. One thing I want to point out though too is, all of the intakes that we design here utilize our washable, reusable filters. So kind of going into the care and feeding of an AFE intake, how much filtration capacity do our filters have over, let's say, a stock filter?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking of like dust holding capacity and that kind of thing, if you think of like a standard filter, it might be a 6-inch by 10-inch rectangle, versus our replacement filters might be a 6-inch base with an 8-inch long filter. You could see up to 250% increase in surface area on some of these filters. And that's not including like an inverted top or something like that we have on some of our air filters.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right. That was from Hernando out at 4x4 in Colombia. How often do our filters need to be changed? I think we covered that. They don't need to be changed specifically. They just need to be serviced. And kind of going into that, how often or how frequent does a filter need to be maintained or serviced?
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't need to be changed. It does need to be serviced. And we typically ask people to inspect it every time they do an oil change, especially standard driving. But probably follow the manufacturer's recommendations in your service manual. Some of these can last 30,000 miles between cleanings, that kind of thing, but just keep an eye on it.
So they don't need to be changed unless it's degrading or tore up. It's abused. It's off-road a lot. Maybe it hasn't been serviced, or maybe somebody inadvertently took a air hose to it and blew the media all around just to try to get it cleaned out. That's not the way to clean it. And if you want to know more about cleaning and maintaining our filters, we do have another webinar on our dealer portal, as well as YouTube videos out on the AFE Power channel. So the filter media, what's the primary filter media that we offer?
Yeah, most of our intakes will come with either Pro Dry S, dry synthetic media, or Pro 5R 5-layer oil cotton gauze media. We do have a couple other options for some of our heavy duty trucks. We do some Pro 10R, which is a 10-layer cotton gauze for a little more severe duty applications, as well as our ProGuard 7, which combines 2 layers of the Pro Dry S as well as 5 layers of cotton gauze, which we recommend for off-road dusty environments and work job sites, that kind of stuff, where you're going to be driving around primarily in dusty conditions.
So the ProGuard 7 and the Pro 5R, those are oiled filters. Another question that we got from Hernando at Iguana 4x4, he was asking, like, how much oil do these filters need when you service them?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, we do have a video on servicing the filters. All the filters are different sizes. There's no right answer here. So I'd recommend they watch the video, and we've got some pretty good instructions on how to tell visually when you're adding oil to the filter.
So there's really no formulation per se.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what new vehicles are we working on as far as like what intakes and product development? That actually came out from Michael at Best Exhaust out in Australia. That's a good question.
Yeah, we've got a lot of vehicles we've had in the shop lately. So we've got the Ford Raptor R with the new 5.2 supercharged engine, the Bronco Raptor with the 3.0 twin turbo, the new Ranger and Ranger Raptor, the new 2024 Tacoma, the S650 Mustang,
Wow.
the new Civic Type R, GR Corolla, the 2024 Jeep Wrangler. They made some changes on the 2.0, so we're getting a couple intakes for that going right now. The new Jeep Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. They released those originally with 6.4 liter Hemi and the 5.7, and now they just introduced the new Hurricane engine, straight 6 3.0 twin turbo. So we're going after all those right now.
So we're really holding true to the like first to market when we're developing these products. That's a great question. And kind of the follow up, that was also a similar question that was asked by Stephen out at Kraftwerk in Germany. What other products that we're planning on? I know we're working more than just intakes. So your department's been busy with some other products, right?
Yeah, we're working on some snorkels right now too, which are intake related. So we've got one for the Jeep Wrangler JL, which will be out later this year, and then we've also got a couple other applications that we're going to be doing some snorkels for coming up. So
awesome. Well, looking forward to seeing that new product coming out, and looks like we're just about out of time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And since we just launched this a few weeks back, these webinars, we're going to try to keep a steady flow going, have them maybe twice a month. So keep your eye on your email boxes, and we'll send you out those invites if you're interested. Definitely welcome any feedback on anything you'd like us to cover, especially if you have any feedback on how we might be able to improve these webinars. These are done for you guys and gals out in the and our partners for AFE products. And we're excited because we see a lot of global interaction and engagement, and we're really stoked on that. And we want to keep this thing going. So any feedback or input from you guys is more than welcome.
thank you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
Justin.
so much. You should get an email with a link to the recording afterwards, and then it will be available in your dealer portal.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time. Thanks, Justin.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.